Hi.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our February virtual tasting with Kathy Joseph of Fiddlehead Cellars, who Allison will do a formal introduction for shortly. But before we begin, great to have everybody here as always. Really good turnout. So it's nice to see that. And of course, just a couple of reminders before we begin. We are going to mute everybody. So if you do have any questions for Kathy at any time, go ahead and throw those in the chat. Allison and I will be monitoring those. We'll be able to answer them whenever we can. Yeah, I think that's it. We're recording this. So if you want to rewatch it, I will send out the link tomorrow morning. Also, some good news is I have finally let technology catch up with me and discovered that I can take these video files and upload them onto YouTube. So if you missed our January tasting with Christian Pillsbury of Eden Rift, I will send the link out to that on our YouTube channel. So you're able to catch up with all of the old. Yes, Chris Kern can learn.
That's because Chris Kern finally listened to Allison.
That was my unsuccessful sophomore and junior year vice presidential ASB slogan that did not get me elected. So it's not that great a slogan, even though it does rhyme, which I thought was fairly impressive. Okay, with that being said, Allison, would you like to introduce today's very special guest?
Yes, I'm very excited to introduce Kathy Joseph. I met Kathy back in the beginning of my entry into this wine industry when I was running a wine education business, and it was all centered around this little movie called Sideways that her wine was featured in. And we met through that, and then I had the pleasure of selling her wine when I went to work for an importer distributor. And while Fiddlehead was not, a challenge for me to sell, I sold more Fiddlehead than anyone else and didn't meet my goals on other wines. So I've always been a fan of this wine in the Santa Ynez Valley. Yes, a fellow Chicagoan. Kathy is an amazing person. If you've not had Fiddlehead wines and not met this woman, you have to understand that she is one of the first women in Santa Barbara County. She was one of the first to buy a vineyard, plant her own vineyard. 1989, bought Fiddlesticks Vineyard and has been making, not 1988,
No, 1989 was the first vintage. And then Fiddlesticks Vineyard came a little bit later in the life of the brand, and I can address that later.
Yeah, so that's right, 1992, I think, 93. So I have been a fan going up, spending every February normally at her pink party when she releases her rosé, and every July on the 28th, drink 728 on 728, and have been a loyal fan and supporter. So it's very exciting to have you all taste her wines today. And so Kathy, to get started, why don't you tell us, this is my second time asking her this question and the first time she might actually answer it. What is the best wine you ever drank?
Okay, well, one, I'm really excited to be here and share with you my experience, my story, my pleasures, and get you excited about my wines. Secondly, from what Allison said, clearly I'm a party animal in spite of my demure presence here.
We've got plenty of party animals here on display.
I do.
So yes, you are welcome in the circle.
And the reason, so addressing your question about the wines, the wine that, what was it that
Well, I like to know the most memorable wine you drank.
Yeah, okay.
Chris likes to know the best wine you ever drank, which is
the best bottle you've ever opened.
Okay, they're both crappy questions, because if you love wine, you love a lot of wine. You don't love just one wine. You gotta love them all for different reasons. And my take on wine is you love the experience and the moment and the thing that, just rings your bell. It's who you're with, what the temperature is, what the, barrels smell like, or the forest floor smells like, or the fireworks that are going off. I mean, it's the memory that creates the wine experience. the wines have to be delicious. No one wants to drink crappy wine. So I have two stories to share. One was I love to cook. I love to cook. I love to create in my kitchen. I'm not afraid of making a mistake. I love spices. And I hate to go out for New Year's Eve. So I'm a homebody when it comes to that.
It's an amateur
So-
drunks holiday.
Well, sure, you can get as drunk as you want, right? And
At
so
home, yeah.
I remember a very memorable New Year's Eve in front of the fireplace in my home with my husband. And we go through, you know, my extensive wine cellar that is the range of, you know, cheap grocery store wine to, you know, some of the best DRCs you can get your hands on. And this particular day, I made some sort of a stew, something. And I remember, this is many, many years ago, and I remember the Ridge Geyserville Zinfandel that we had
nice.
that, and I leave the sticker on my wine. So I think it cost about $12. And, you know, the sign of a great wine is it disappears quickly. And it tasted so good and was so well balanced and just was so exciting because it wasn't about how much it costs. It really wasn't about who made it. It was that it was perfect for the moment. And so that's my first story. The second story was a very close family friend invited me over for dinner and a glass of wine. And he brings out he had an extensive cellar. He buys mega futures. He doesn't, who knows if he knows what they're about or tastes them, but it was an Haut-Brion Blanc, and people ooh and ah all the time over red wines. This is a white wine that captured my heart. It was so, I'm sitting in his living room, he's pouring me wine. I always wish I had more. And it was so good that I think it was the incentive for me to create one of the wines that I make that actually was featured in Sideways, called Honeysuckle. We're drinking one of the other wines, a sister wine tonight, Happy Canyon. It's really great. But Honeysuckle is this very, has wine with incredible depth. It's really, really, really exciting. And so my whole company was around finding these great wines and seeing if I could simulate their character by knowing where they ended up, kind of analyzing what made them so delicious and working backwards in the cellar and finding vineyards that helped me create special wines.
Nice.
Okay, Allison, how was that?
That was a fantastic double answer. I loved it.
It was good. You were worrying me at the beginning because I thought you were getting into like 20-something hat-wearing wine influencer speak with the beginning. But then the minute you dove into the stories, we were saved. So you redeemed yourself quite nicely. So if you haven't poured yourself the 2016 Happy Canyon Sauvignon Blanc, please go ahead and do so. And as we're starting to enjoy that, Kathy, why don't you take us through how you got into winemaking? What was the bug that kind of set you off in this business? And was it something you had always wanted to do, or were you in another career and somehow there was a transition into making wine?
So growing up in the Midwest, I grew up outside of Chicago. We kind of grew up with, telling the real story. There's no made up stuff here. And I was a kid. I was, looking for a job. I knew what I was good at, and I wanted to find something that was exciting, that took advantage of my talents and my education, and that was satisfying and something I could grow with. And frankly, it didn't matter what it was, but when I went to college, I was great at science, but I wanted to live beyond what medical school was going to deliver. And so I took ag science and soil science, and I wanted to open the door to opportunity. And so that my bug was, I don't know what I'm going to do. I mean, young and foolish. I said, hey, maybe there's an opportunity in the wine business because of the research at Davis. And I'm a, doer. I talked to everyone I knew and ultimately landed a job in Sonoma at Simi Winery with the very famous Zelma Long. And talk about influences, oh my God, that I didn't even know were coming my way, oh my God. But I just, my whole life became a sponge of information from this incredible range of influences that I continue to kind of seek out new information every day of the week.
Nice. So how, to kind of backtrack a little bit, how did you get from Chicago to California? Was that something you were planning on, or was it just you wanted to get out of the crappy weather in Chicago and get to California?
And
rare...
also ending up at UC Davis of all schools.
Yeah.
So I'm one of the rare people that loves the Midwest and loves that crappy weather. I love the snow.
Uno Giordano's or Malnati's?
Well, Mr. Beef, that's where it's all
about. I love some Mr. Beef. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, we had family in California. My folks had lived there. Travel is in my blood from a young age. Being on my own, it's part of the thrill of life. And I ended up in California because I was pursuing the experiment of maybe wine is going to fulfill my ambitions. And simultaneously, I applied to grad school at Davis. So I entered the grad program, and it was a way I could apply my incredible undergraduate degree, which was really phenomenal, from UW-Madison in Wisconsin, to what wine was all about.
Go Badgers. You betcha.
I think that's Minnesota.
I know. Sorry. Go Gophers.
The other night. So anyway, like I said, I was really open, and if it worked, I would stay. And if it didn't work, I wouldn't stay. And every harvest, I went to a different winery, and I was really embraced by the winemakers and the owners, and was involved in, cellar work, like hooking up hoses and learning about pumps and driving the forklift and all that stuff, but involved in blending trials. And one of the things Zelma taught me was how your palate worked. I was shocked to hear that a wine that might be sweet could be balanced to perfection by acidity. Mm-hmm. And so that it wasn't important if it was sweet, the balance was important. And it became one of my guiding lights to craft wines that where all the components, the alcohol, the fruit, the tannins, went into the bottle in a very balanced state. And it's what makes my wines very ageable, but also have a very luscious and elegant component to them. And not all wines have to be made this way, but I wanted to make wines that weren't extreme in any one component. And I learned that from that very early education with Zelma on how you taste wines.
Yeah, we're drinking a 2016 Sauvignon Blanc, which is, fairly unheard of in California. I have talked to some people who refuse to drink any California white wines that are older than 3 years. But this is a 16. We've had some 15s and 14s as part of the club that are still drinking excellently. I think balance is key, but what do you find is key with the white wine? Is it controlling that acidity? Is it, balancing it with the fruit and the sugar level? What's the key to longevity in a white wine?
So just as another little aside, I threw this big party at the end of November, and I pulled out a ton of wine from my cellar. I probably had 30 to 40 wines, and some in mags, and some had labels that were crappy. And the big star, the talk about wine, was the 2001 Happy Canyon Sauvignon Blanc.
It was
And I'm
incredible.
telling you, when I talk about wine, the things that you should notice is I love this part is, don't just think about, oh my God, the age. Look at the color of this wine. This wine looks like it's a 2018 or 2019
Oh,
or
yeah.
2020.
It looks very
is-
fresh.
It's not oxidized, which means it hasn't turned orange. It has a ton of fruit, and the fruit isn't fresh fruit like you just ate a orange or a pear. This is about fruit that has evolved to show you a little bit of the peaches and the pears and the lemons. So that, remember, my premise is don't make wines that are aggressive. And so I make my wines backwards. I pick a model that I like. And my model for this one was Sauvignon Blanc out of the Loire Valley, Pouilly-Fumé in particular. So that Sancerres are a little bit more herbal and maybe brighter acidity. But this wine is really meant to kind of demonstrate a silkiness to the wine, but you might think it's simple. It's hardly simple. It will hold up to an amazing range of flavors. And so I'm thinking, what do I do to achieve this? And I have a lot of years in the cellar, starting with Robert Pacoda Winery in Calistoga, where I could experiment with a lot of other clients' wines. And I learned that new oak is okay on Sauvignon Blanc as long as it's balanced. And so my semi recipe that is adjusted every vintage was to have a portion in new oak, but a portion in neutral oak, and a portion in stainless. And if you give the wine some time in the bottle, that the source of those flavors becomes disguised, because that doesn't matter. What matters is, how does it taste? Is it good? What does it go with? And this wine is meant to be versatile, almost chameleon-like.
Mhm.
You can have this wine with things you wouldn't anticipate, like, I've had it with lamb crusted in coriander. It is that rich of a wine that it would almost surprise you.
Yeah.
So I like to kind of think outside of the box in terms of my pairings, but this wine has longevity that you can tell not only by flavor and taste, but by the color and by many, many older vintages that I share.
I was at Kathy's event in November and got to taste those early 2000 Sauvignon Blancs. But pre-COVID, I was at an event you did for your 25th anniversary, right? 30th anniversary? I don't know. It was
Don't ask a woman her age, Allison. You know that.
the winery, but in that day I had written we had the 93, the 95, and the 98 Sauvignon Blancs, and
Unreal.
oh my God, the 1993.
Yeah.
Never in my life did I think that a California Sauvignon Blanc from 1993 would be as fresh, as electric and alive as that wine was. It was exquisite.
And so I really want everyone to break like I do. I want you to break all the rules, break what you've been told, break what you think is going to happen, and let your palate drive your appreciation, especially of my wines, because they're very exciting to discover because they're different from what everyone else is doing, and they're really on point for the varietal. And maybe not so much in California where everyone is looking to fruit, but on a very global scale, they're really true to form on what the variety can do. And my attraction to Sauvignon Blanc is its versatility. So you can do a lot of different things in the cellar and make different wines. And so my wine, unfortunately today we can only taste one Sauvignon Blanc, but my portfolio of Sauvignon Blancs has two other in particular, gooseberry and honeysuckle, that would just shock the pants off you because of how good they are for a different reason. And it kind of demonstrates, again, my attraction to the variety, because it doesn't have to be made in one way. And one of the things that allows me to get at this is where the grapes are grown. So if I can just for a minute talk about Santa Ynez Valley.
Yeah, go ahead. Talk about Santa Ynez.
Actually,
and then go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, no, I was actually going to say, because we've had other Santa Barbara vintners on here, and I've always talked about, the Transverse Mountain Range and cooler to warmer, but being based in Santa Rita Hills, doing Pinot Noir, you're doing Sauvignon Blanc, which I was going to ask you, where are you getting your Sauvignon Blanc from?
Right.
I'm gonna take a guess on this one and say it's from Happy Canyon in Santa Barbara. Don't ask me how I know that, but
it's all in the name, right?
Also, I'm a little disappointed that we're not trying those other two Sauvignon Blancs, because I'm not wearing pants, so I wouldn't even have to worry about them blowing my pants off. So it's fine.
Our area is extraordinarily unique in that we have that transverse mountain range that Allison alluded to. Millions of years ago, our mountain ranges shifted from a north-south orientation to east-west. The importance of that is that the valley acts as a throat to coastal breezes coming in. And the closer you are to the ocean, the cooler daytime temperatures. So Santa Rita Hills was kind of created around being where my Pinot Noir is grown, and we'll taste that in a bit, but it's very much directly influenced by the coastal breezes. However, we have a mountain range to the south of us. And so as you go inland, for every mile that you travel, it gets a degree warmer. When in Santa Rita Hills, it might be 70 degrees. In Happy Canyon, 30 miles to the east, it could be 100 degrees.
Mhm.
And therefore, it's much better suited to Bordeaux varietals that need that additional heat units to ripen the flavors to perfection. The thing that makes the district really unique is that every evening, the coastal fog falls over the mountain ranges, whether you're in Happy Canyon or in Santa Rita Hills, and it acts as a cooling influence. And in Happy Canyon, what happens is it helps to retain the acidity in the grapes. And so I am able to pick my Sauvignon Blanc grapes like at a perfect level of acidity, completely without adjustment. And in fact, malolactic fermentation, where you deacidify wines, is not of interest because I want to preserve the grape flavors, and also I want to retain the natural acidity. So I don't have to add these extra flavors to get this wine that is kind of my target point. So Happy Canyon, only 30 miles away, a completely different climate. Better for Bordeaux and Rhone varietals because it's much warmer during the day. And Santa Rita Hills, cool climate, day in and day out, which Pinot Noir demands.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about the Santa Rita Hills when we get to the next couple of wines, but take us through this wine in particular about, how are you picking, how are you bringing the grapes in? Is this a vineyard that you control, or are you buying these grapes from one particular vineyard or different vineyards? And then, what happens when they get onto the crush pad? What are you doing to these grapes that make such a smooth, creamy Sauvignon Blanc and maintain that acidity without kind of bringing out the flaws in it?
Well, really hands-on winemakers like to say, remind you that the wines are made in the vineyard. So what it's not just any vineyard, it's vineyards that are farmed to specifications. And while I owned the Sauvignon or the Pinot Noir vineyard, if you don't own it, you want to partner with someone that allows you to give input to
How you're
make
pruning,
adjustments,
how you're picking.
where you make adjustments in the vineyard, how much water the vines get, and exposing the grapes, and timing has a lot to do with it. And so I work with a couple of vineyards out in Happy Canyon, Vogelsang, and Westerly. But the take home is the opportunity to be able, don't get me wrong, there's nothing like owning the vineyard. That's complete control. But second best is being able to manage and give input. And so usually contracts are by the acre, so that you pay for the premium to be able to control what happens to your 10 rows in any given spot. So I'm in the vineyards a lot. I am paying attention to the ripening of the grapes. I'm sampling, I'm tasting, I'm analyzing, I'm trying to decide how they're going to translate into the wine I want to make. When these grapes, I pull the trigger and they're picked, I'm in the field sorting out anything that doesn't belong. It's really important for me to be there because it gives me the opportunity to deliver to myself at the winery top-notch fruit. These grapes are, I want to preserve the delicacy, so they're whole cluster pressed. And they go directly to stainless steel to begin fermentation. I want to keep some wine in stainless to preserve the freshness and the brightness, but I want to add depth and density to the wine. So as the bricks drops, I then transfer the wine to some new French oak barrels and some neutral French oak barrels, where the wine, that portion of the wine will finish fermentation. But as it's very different from putting the wine into the barrel post fermentation, because as the fermentation is happening, you get integration of the oak into the wine and your textures become much more integrated. In addition,
oh, sorry, I was just going to interrupt and say that's really interesting. I think you're the first winemaker I've heard of who actually transfers the must in the middle of fermentation into a secondary vessel, because normally it either goes in, barrel before to start fermentation, or they put it in after. But what is it like to
it's hard.
I was going to say, can it be affected by the pumping and whatnot?
Yeah, and you can use gravity. There's winemakers that do what's easy, and there's winemakers that do what's best, And I kind of say, what's going to make a better wine? And so I'm willing to, it's an active fermentation. And so you have to manage the transfer. And, to me, it makes a better wine. And so I've picked coopers that are, I think, the source of the wine, different barrels create different integration. So you have to find what you're looking for. I like working with Damy French oak because I think it works well with my wines because it's not aggressive. In the barrel, you have to constantly smell and monitor the success of the fermentation, because things can go wrong. If you don't check them, you don't discover. But what adds depth to this wine is that the wine is aged on the yeast, like in a champagne, where it adds volume to the wine. And volume you can get through malolactic fermentation, which I didn't want the additional buttery flavor, or you can allow the wine to become integrated through yeast cells that are breaking apart and contributing to the depth of the wine. Ultimately, all the different positions types of fermentations get blended together.
Yeah.
And it's the package that matters. It's not the pieces, it's the package. And my winemaking is driven by how the wine tastes. So when is it ready? It's when it tastes right to me. And a lot of that is experience in the cellar.
So are you blending them together and then allowing the blended wine to age a little bit more on
No,
the yeast cells or whatnot, or are you
No.
aging
No.
separately and then blending at the end?
blended and bottled.
Okay,
It's done. It's done. The
ready to go,
components are done
basically.
doing their thing. Yeah. And then the aging in the bottle becomes very important because new oak can be very aggressive. I didn't want to taste a wine where the first thing someone would say is oaky, but rather oftentimes people say, hey, is there any oak in this wine? Like out of curiosity. And so it doesn't really matter, but if you can't tell, isn't that the greatest moment? You know,
That's true.
it's like joke is on it. It's how does it feel in your mouth? How does it taste? What do you want to pair this wine with?
Yeah.
And I really think these wines, again, there's that degree of elegance, but you have to keep freshness in the wine. So I'm just going to mention that you may have more questions about this wine, Chris, but this was the education and the springboard for what I was going to do with the Gruner, which is the next wine that we'll talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can easily transition, I think. Go ahead, Allison.
Before just jumping on the Gruner, David Funder had asked kind of what smelling, and I had commented, and Kathy, maybe you're better at putting this in. To me, like I get some lovely aromatics on it, but like you're saying, it's so much more about how it tastes, the mouthfeel, the texture, the balance, the longevity, the freshness, the acidity, that the aromatics are lovely, inviting you, but where I'm lingering is when it's in my mouth.
Who asked that question?
David Funder
raising his hand.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to create a face with the questions. Actually, I think aromatics are really important because they give you the reason to take your next sip. And I was always taught that you enjoy wine for different things. First, you look at color and clarity, not to get overdone on that. And then you, first of all, show me the glasses you're tasting wine in, because this wine.
We're about to be chastised,
that's
I
okay.
think. So,
David, that's fine.
yeah, no,
But it loves a
we're
big
good.
glass.
This is
even
this
though
is a
it's
great
white
glass.
wine.
Yes.
It likes a burgundy glass because it makes the wine grow up in the glass. It makes it more explosive. It makes it more interesting. And you don't want to drink this too cold or too warm. This too cold, you're never going to get these aromatics. So to appreciate the aromatics, I get a little bit of a creme brulee kind of. There's a little bit of this.
I think he agrees with you.
Oh, okay.
He had an epiphany moment when you said that.
But I know that in the life of the wine, it changes, and that's okay too. So, you write wine notes, and I like to talk about pears because they're not too robust in character. They have this really nice kind of understated component, like russet pears. I think of these flavorful pears that are a little bit understated. The honeysuckle takes on this very lemony component, which is unusual because it's a much older wine, and yet that becomes much brighter in the life of the wine. On the other hand, gooseberry, I get it's more pineapple to it. And so it's not just because it's my Sauvignon Blanc, it's the wine, how I made it, and what its age is. Yeah. And it's great to be able to describe wine for a conversation. I think that's hugely important. And I love doing these kind of descriptive analysis tastings and translating so we can have a conversation about this wine. But in the end, I think you don't want it to smell bad.
That's a good rule to live by in life in general.
And
including wine.
And really, you want it to, what you smell is kind of, you want it to be like a continuum with what you taste.
Yeah.
And you know, that's kind of what I like to see in my wine.
And Kathy, you mentioned not to drink this wine too cold or too warm, but there's a question. Do you think that white wines need to breathe as well as red wines do?
Oh, I love that question.
Thank you, Larry.
Larry, raise your hand so Kathy knows who asked.
Yeah, wait, where's Larry?
He's in the dark blue shirt. He's the FXII.
With the finger right there,
Yes,
pointed
right there.
across.
That's Larry.
I don't think you should come to the table thinking even red wines have to breathe. I think you should pour yourself a taste and decide if it needs to breathe. And some white wines do, and some red wines do, but not all of them. And I love it when you can kind of say, oh, this seems a little tight. Let's throw it in a decanter. Or if you say, oh, there's a little bit of a reduction to this wine, I think I can make it blossom more if I swirl it in my big fat glass here to make it be the wine it was meant to be. And so I would encourage you not to make any of those assumptions, red or white, but to kind of taste the wine. If you don't love it, there's a couple of tweaks and special things we can do to make it because wine's organic, it's very responsive. And it's not that it was made badly, it's that maybe it was made in a very reductive way and your tasting of the wine is letting it sing, you know, and you have to help it a little bit. And so in the case of my wines, I would say they do not need to breathe. Part of that is my aging process. And I think they're ready to go the minute you throw it in the glass. I do believe they grow up in the glass, and depending on the vintage and, you know, they might change, but all in a very positive way. None of them follow, none of my, you know, range of releases fall apart is my experience.
Nice. So before we jump to the Gruner, you mentioned, last question, you mentioned thinking outside the box, breaking the rules when it comes to food pairings. So do you have any, like you mentioned the lamb earlier, but are there any other food pairings? Like for that Sauvignon Blanc, I would put it up against like a pepper crusted seared ahi, something that's, you know, meatier, richer. The pepper, I think with that acidity would be fantastic with it, but I would love to hear some of your other food pairing thoughts that are kind of outside the box, like a Big Mac and fries.
So
double maybe?
Many of my wines, this one acts a little bit more in a chameleon behavior. So when you present it with a richer food, some pasta with a cream sauce, its acidity tends to perk up. Mm-hmm. When you present it with goat cheese and something that has, you know, higher acid,
tart and tang too.
Right, tang, something tangy, its volume tends to present. So it's kind of fun because of its versatility. It just has this giant range. So I can talk about chicken with you know, different preparations, like brighter ones with citrus.
Yeah.
Or we can go the mushroom route to give it some earthiness. And
like
this wine is going to, and I'm a big spice person. I like thyme in a lot of my recipes.
We all like more thyme.
Fresh thyme. It's a very kind of important go-to wine in my cellar because no matter how I feel, it's kind of ready for me.
Yeah.
So
vegan lobster,
you know,
mac
listen,
and cheese.
I would not pour this wine with a pepper steak, but fish, like super, and you can go the meaty route or the very like delicate fleshy route. Like I said, it's very much a chameleon.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's how I would describe the Gruner, but that has a different favorite food pairing for me.
Let's talk about Gruner.
Yes. Are we going to talk about artichokes when it comes to Gruner, or where are we going?
No, garlic. Anything
Oh,
with
okay.
garlic. It's like, oh my God, garlic shrimp in the Gruner because it has
Mm,
these great sort of ginger and aromatics that, I love the Gruner because of its exotic qualities, but
yes.
it's also very tame. It's
Yeah.
hard to describe it. Sometimes I get honeydew melon in my Gruner. People often like to talk about white pepper, so it can have a spicy component.
Mhm.
The
Some
Gruner,
minerality.
yeah, minerality. Well, that's across the board in all these wines, really. It's
Yeah.
our region
But
that,
generally, Gruners tend to be, especially those coming from, the Wachau and the Federspiel in Austria, because they're in those steep granite hillsides, tend to have that minerality. I find it's a grape that, the vines pick up where they're planted, more so than
right.
any other whites.
I get a little bit of that of almond kind of. Maybe I'm just because like
That's fun.
I think your finger is
I
talking.
like Gruner Veltliner became an experiment. I drank a lot of Austrian Gruner, where the grapes are indigenous and grown. I every day at our harvest lunch, which is our break in the day, we would import cases of Gruner to taste something new and different. And I went off on a limb to see if it would be successful at Fiddlesticks because I was unsure of the climate. And lo and behold, they ripened about a week after the Pinot, indicating to me they're ready, they're tasting great, they have great balance. And I didn't quite know how to make them. I knew the wines that I liked from Austria. And within my portfolio, I have several offerings, but basically you have to start somewhere. And I started with what does new oak do and what does neutral oak do and what is and stainless. And so I could taste components. And as I start out every new wine, I could run a series of blends, observe them over time, and fine tune what I think was the perfection of what my target was. So part of that is giving myself the opportunity to find what is going to make the best wine. It's interesting because it only took 1 year to realize that new oak was not my target, but that and neither was stainless. Stainless is fruity, in, out, bright acidity, and I wanted more depth to the wine. So I learned that about 80% neutral oak and about 20% stainless, depending on the vintage, made the viscosity I was looking for and didn't overshadow the fruit of the grape.
That's really interesting, because I think when most people think of Gruner Veltliners, they think either stainless steel or concrete because of the acidity, the freshness to them. So the fact that they work so well in neutral oak is interesting. And then I'd love for you to answer that. But then my other question is, you were one of the first to bring over, did you bring over Gruner Veltliner? Because you're one of the first to plant it in California. Was it hard to get the vines over here? Was this something you had to manage, or was there already some?
What year was this? What year did you plant, and what year was your first Gruner?
So just addressing those 12 questions.
Yeah, sorry. We have so much to say, so much to ask.
First of all, I think that Chris, what you described as Gruner is more of an American take on Gruner. It's not a Austrian take. There's many luscious, rich, reserve style, maybe, Gruners that actually won my heart. That was something I wanted to make that was different from in and out, style. I felt I learned the grape can deliver more. and it's yeah, there's some amazing older Gruners with lots of volume to them. That was my target. So my mission with my brand is to kind of bring some old worlds, you know, success or specialness into what we can grow here domestically, make the wines place driven, and put our own mark on them, and at the same time learn from some of these other qualities. And so that was a direction that I think was really important when I wanted to dive into Gruner.
Mhm.
Now, to answer Allison's question, I had a couple of irons in the pot and or in the fire, I guess, and was planning a big Gruner project that didn't pan out. And so I had probably ordered Gruner vines from some of our local nurseries that use original plant material, probably in 2010 or so.
Yeah.
But ultimately at Fiddlesticks, they didn't go in the ground until 2012. I think that's about right. I may have that timeline a little bit off, but it's close. They did go into the ground in 2012. 2014 was our first vintage, but it was on vines that had more years on it than that year reflects. So 2014 was a small vintage, a little bit experimental, but amazing, really great.
I got to try it. I remember.
This is a 2015. This is a 2016, but I've expanded to make a Barrel Select Gruner, which has a special pet name called Bebel. Bebel is my dad's pet name for my mom, part of the family connection that I like to incorporate into my wines. But it also is a pretty, it's kind of intensifies all the character that you see in this estate wine. And in addition, we make this amazing late harvest Gruner called
nice.
Sweetie, which I've made a lot of late harvest wines from Muscat to Sauvignon Blanc, and Gruner just lent itself to ripening to higher sugars on the vine. I didn't have to dehydrate. I didn't have to, do any blending. And so Sweetie has become a really fabulous part of the portfolio and the Gruner family.
Very nice. Wow. I mean, I remember in 2011 when I opened my wine shop, sort of looking for a domestic Gruner, and all I could find out there was, I think Darcy Kent was the only producer of Gruner. So you were, clearly at the forefront of this, and now it's a grape and I guess there was Zocker up here in the Edna Valley. I think those were sort of the main two.
Well, let's see. I think when I researched it, there were about 100 acres when I put the Gruner in the ground.
Okay.
About only 100 acres in entire California.
Yeah.
When I was at grad school, God, I'm really remiss because I can't remember his name. But was some Gruner planted in Napa. A kind of comrade of same vintage as me, and I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but he was really a great contact to say, what are your successes? And, it's how I start things out, is to explore and gather information. And, you want to be successful, and why not play off your resources? And it was extremely limited. And of course, it's very impacted by where it's grown. And Santa Rita Hills was a pretty sweet spot for preserving the character of the grape and for preserving the acidity in the wine. So again, non-malolactic, and but very much speaks to the place.
Yeah.
How much did you plant?
2.8 acres.
Mm.
Little. So get it while you can.
And the whole vineyard Fiddlesticks was how many planted acres?
100.
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah, almost 3%. Is Gruner something, we'll talk a little bit with the next two wines about how you've sold Fiddlesticks, but is Gruner something that you're planning on continuing with? Do you have a deal with the new owners to continue to get access to the Gruner? Are you looking at other vineyards?
Kind of, maybe, who knows?
Okay. Yeah, just you'll play it by ear. Who knows? We'll see.
The world is Kathy's oyster.
Yes, clearly.
I like
Malvasia Bianca coming soon.
No, I mean, I like to live spontaneously, but I also like to, I don't want to close doors to new options. And I like continuity, but I have the luxury of doing some new and exciting things forthcoming. And it's nothing I can talk about in details because I'm not even sure myself, but every day I stumble on something that is like, ooh, how can I take advantage of this?
Kathy, I'm curious. You are the Pinot Noir maven, which we're going to jump into, and Sauvignon Blanc has been your other baby. You added Gruner. And I know you used to be in Napa and you've made Cabernet. So what's one grape that you would love to play with?
Wait a minute. I made a lot more than that. I made Zinfandel, Merlot, Chardonnay, Muscat. I made, I'm trying to think of this. Oh gosh, I wish I could. The grapes that I worked with when I was at Pacoda were interesting, exotic, and unheard of. And so what was the question?
Is there a particular grape that you would love to play with now? I mean,
get access to, play with, make some wine.
I certainly would not limit myself to anything out there. The door is open. There's so much opportunity. I have so many great releases still to come that you guys are going to love. Nice. Coming from the vineyards I've worked with. And when the right moment happens and things fall in my lap, they don't just happen. You make things happen. That's what I do. You make it happen. You'll be the first to know. Get on my mailing list. That's how you're going to.
There you go.
I wasn't asking you to divulge what you're going to do. I was just curious. Like you said that you drank a lot of Austrian Gruner during your harvest time, and that was part of what inspired you to try it here. And I was wondering if any other grapes sort of,
why are you interested? Why are you interested in Ciliegiolo or,
So I don't make wines just because they're exotic. And also there's a few wines that, because in my informative years, I made so much Chardonnay that I really stepped back from making Chardonnay. You find the right site, the right specialness. Oh, who knows? So I really don't have my eye on anything because I don't start by saying, this is the thing. A lot of people, a lot of new winemakers say, oh, can you plant this because it's different and exotic and no one's making it? That's not what I do. I kind of say, God, this grape tastes great in this spot because of my history. I can interpret what the vineyard is delivering. It'd be really exciting to work with it and see how I could make it something special for all of us. And so it's not a plan as a target. It's more of a use all the information that I have to jump on opportunity.
Well, let me put you on the spot for a second because you've clearly been on both sides of this, but do you think for a winemaker, it's better to own your own vineyard where you have full control over things, or to be able to have relationships to buy grapes from other vineyards where you can start to experiment every year and do new things? And obviously I know, if you have the means, you can do both of those, but if you had to lean into one of those two directions, which would you lean into?
I have a definite answer for that.
Oh, good. We're glad you're not going to hedge.
My answer, no, my answer is, there's nothing like owning a vineyard to learn what decisions you should be making. And I owned Fiddlesticks for 25 years. I fell out of bed and walked Fiddlesticks every day of the week. But the experience that you learn doesn't leave you when you sell a vineyard. You know what to look for. Mm-hmm. So if you never owned a vineyard, you're shortchanged on information. If you own a vineyard for a long time, that experience carries with you, and you can translate it to a vineyard that you don't own. And you can partner with a grower to make happen what you think is important. So I feel like I'm armed with this incredible history of what is important. And I don't necessarily have to own another vineyard, but I know what I'm looking for.
Nice. I think that sums it up perfectly. So to wrap up Gruner, you mentioned garlic. So I'm thinking, shrimp scampi, or pretty much anything from the Stinking Rose would be fantastic with this. Or
which I drove by today, and I believe it's closed. It looked like a COVID testing center.
No, they're reopening. They're reopening the one in San Francisco. I just saw an article that they're reopening the San Francisco one. So hopefully the LA one will be opened soon enough. But Trader Joe's also makes this delicious garlic spread that if you've never ever had it, I highly recommend. It's basically just pureed emulsified garlic with a little bit of olive oil. But if you ever go to Zen Cow Chicken in LA, they have multiple franchises. It's the same garlic paste that they use.
So I can I step in for a second?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
I, as I mentioned, love food. I love to eat food, a lot of food, but I like to cook a lot. And just like in my food, just like in my wines, I don't like my food too extreme. Garlic is a fabulous component to flavor and creates composition to a dish, but too much is really bad. And it isn't about intensity. It's about, what it contributes. And garlic has this fabulous sort of piece of, I don't know, exoticness too, but it's kind of a little spicy, but too much garlic just doesn't do it for me. So I really love it with garlic dishes. Garlic shrimp feels really good to me, but again, Gruner is an incredibly versatile wine. And I think I love people to push the limits, to try other things. It's not just about the garlic. Gruner Veltliner is a hard name to say. You can call it Gruner. So originally there was a campaign to call it the groovy wine.
Yeah, do not call it groovy. I put my foot down on that one.
Yeah, it's okay. But I'm just saying that Gruner itself is a fine way to make information requests. Do you have a Gruner, for instance? But also I want people to be aware that Gruner, like Sauvignon Blanc, has a range of styles. And tasting mine doesn't necessarily represent what they're all going to be like. And it's okay to say, how do you describe this wine? Is it full-bodied? Is it, buttery? Is it a bright, fresh? Sometimes vintage tells you the story. 2020 is going to be very young and about the fruit. Mine is more about the range and versatility. I really love this wine, and there's not a lot of it. So I want people to press their limits to see what else is out there that they might not originally know. that's kind of where I'm at is, it's really fun. Okay, I see you, Scott, you're pouring a little Pinot there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we will get to that in a second. I want to ask one quick question, which is, you kind of mentioned that there's, not a lot of Gruner here, and David and Patty were talking about how they fell in love with the grape in 2007 when they were living in Berlin at German wine shops. It was available quite a bit, but they got to the United States and it's not as readily available here. I have always known Gruner as sort of the sommelier's favorite wine. It seems like if you go into a lot of restaurants and sommeliers are looking to recommend something, Gruner is one of the first white wines that they'll always recommend. So why do you think the grape hasn't caught on here, both from an export or an import situation, and also from growing it? Is it we just don't have enough cool weather wine spots to sustain it, or is it just the popularity of, other varietals has kind of pushed Gruner to the edges?
Let's see. For David, fiddleheadcellars.com to replenish your cellar.
Yes.
To answer Chris's question, I think people are afraid of how to say it, and it's always tough introducing a new exotic varietal. I believed in it. I sort of ran out with my torch and
Championed it. Yeah.
But they're not guaranteed sales. People don't know anything about it. I mean, thank goodness for Sideways, because people were given permission to drink Pinot Noir, right?
Yes. At the expense of former
and that
wine.
wasn't a very popular variety pre-Sideways. So Gruner is pre-Sideways in essence. And thanks to you, this is a great platform to introduce people to something they don't know about because of its lack of availability.
The Beagles are interested.
Yes, somebody has come home with food. So the Beagles are suddenly Beagles do love their Gruner Veltliner, even though they're from England. They love a good dry white wine. So last thing on Gruner, and I don't want to linger on this, but I had always been told that Gruner is the one wine that can stand up to asparagus and artichoke, which are the two hardest foods to pair with white wines because they have a chemical in them that affects their flavor. Have you seen that with your Gruner or with other Gruners you've tasted?
If I'm doing a wine dinner, I would rather leave those components out of the menu.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I don't like them, but I just think that certain vegetables have a sulfury component to them. Asparagus tends to be a little bit love-hate relationship. Does it go with it? That's personal preference. I'm going to encourage everyone to test the waters on that. But I'm not here to judge what food pairings you like. Just make suggestions.
All right. That's a good hedge right there. Perfect. All right, let's dive into the Pinot. The beauty of this tasting, which I'm so excited about, and I have them side by side, is we have, the 728, your 728 Pinot Noir, but we have two different vintages of it, the 15 and the 13. So which, Kathy, would you like us to start with? Which one do you think we should dive into?
So I just can I give a little background?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Pinot Noir was the platform kind of for Fiddlehead Cellars, and but not just Pinot Noir from Santa Barbara County, but also from Oregon, from the Willamette Valley. And unfortunately, we can't share how that fits into this tasting because it's such a great opportunity to talk about great Pinot from regions that are designed to grow Pinot.
Right.
The other route, we talked a lot about what's the best way for us to go. And we decided that because I talk so much about aging Pinot, that showing a couple of vintages that you don't necessarily get to taste from other wineries is pretty exciting. And so not only are they different vintages, but there's been a label redesign to
Mhm.
those of you who have the bottles in front of you. So the original label, which is a darker burgundy label, kind of hard to read in restaurants, but cool. I have people who say,
very
"Oh, I love
elegant.
that wine," you know. And then our sort of updated, brighter logo redesign label that has other benefits. So I would like to start with the 2013 because I think of it as a softer, silkier. I don't always go this way sometimes, but for this tasting, I think that's a nice way to approach this.
And now,
Yes.
just to answer the 3 or 4 people who wanted to know, I will not be partaking in the 2013 as that bottle broke and I sliced off the tip of my finger pad on the bottle, just touching it yesterday. And that is why my finger's wrapped in blue for all of you who showed concern earlier in the tasting. Thank you.
And for the record, I was not there or anywhere near the bottle and had nothing to do with that.
No, it was funny. Yesterday morning, Stacy dropped by to pick up 4 bottles, and I gave her the ones I had up here for me, and I had the others in the car that I was going to drop off to her and then David. And then I get a call from David asking where I am, and I'm like, I had a little side trip to the, emergency room. Be there soon.
So, Kathy, this is a good time to kind of talk, continue your history because you're up at Davis, then you moved to Simi and Pacoda up there. But what brings you down to Santa Barbara? You always had a love for Pinot Noir? Was it a grape that sort of drew you down there, or were you just looking for a different location to make wines?
It's a great story that I relive almost every day. Here I am in Napa, getting a tremendous education and experience, but remember this little hungry, eager beaver wanting to make her mark in the wine world because I'm loving every piece of information that is being thrown my way. And I'm thinking, how am I going to make my mark? And I'm exploring, I was into like do some research and I'm thinking, oh, I love the wines of Russian River, but shoot, who can afford that land and what's available? And I'm going to be just this little pinprick on a scenario of successful people. And I'm forever tasting, exploring, and through all of my travels, I'm feeling like there's regions that are so well, this is like, you got to really look into this. And I'm thinking there's these regions that are so well suited for Pinot Noir, but they're kind of like nobody really knows about them. They're
Out in the middle of nowhere.
They're kind of spending in their wine region. So I need to I'm thoughtful about my future, and I'm thinking I learned that Santa Barbara County, oh my God, this cool climate. Some of the wines are really fabulous. Some are terrible. You have to look beyond the early experiment, and some grapes are planted in the wrong place. And then there's Oregon that it's following a similar path, and they're only talking about Pinot Noir. And I'm thinking, where should I go? And my personality was to craft a package that was going to be different and exciting and unique and bring attention and be part of the new frontier of Pinot Noir and actually Sauvignon Blanc, which is kind of a side thing. And so I did something almost not a single winemaker has ever done. And I wrote a business plan, and I did 10 and 20-year projections.
Oh, wow.
And I kind of looked to places that I believed in were successful. And I brought in, I tried to sell this to silent partners and investors because I wasn't coming to the table with family money. But first, I experimented with the success of the region. So I bought some grapes, I made some wine, and lo and behold, my first wine was poured at the White House. You know, it was like, oh, okay, we'll take 3 cases. And I went, okay, can I send you a bill for that?
Did they pay? Because the government is notorious for not paying.
Well,
their
who
bills.
knew? But, you know, and it went way back to my connections with the guy who used to be at, it's terrible, at Domaine Chandon, who ended up as the consultant. Daniel, what, Allison, do you know his last name? Daniel, who became the winemaker, the consulting wine buyer at the White House. But in any case, the history was design a company that was different from what anyone else was doing. And so nobody was really looking to make just kind of Pinot Noir. I wanted to diversify the portfolio to add in Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
And I wanted to diversify the Pinot Noir by not making a second one from a vineyard down the block or in another location, but from a very different region, and landed on the Willamette Valley in Oregon. And so the company was designed to be Pinot Noir and Sauvignon Blanc, and make it in this more elegant European style that was well balanced. You know, just a word on that, it's not just about alcohol or when you pick, it's about all those components to be balanced. And ageability kind of proves that, which is what my brand's about. And so I kind of started small, forged ahead, grew, and ultimately bought ground to plant a vineyard to supply myself more exciting wine from the region. And so I looked to go to a place that was out of the box, the way I think of everything. Pioneers showed the way. They weren't all great. People made wines that didn't belong. And I wanted to be part of the refinement and the the presentation of how great this place could be.
Yeah.
And so I got in early and I just totally committed, and just like, it was about making the wine in the vineyard and making wines where I didn't over manipulate them, but just let the wines speak for themselves. And Pinot Noir needs that because it's such a transparent varietal. And when you find the right place, these wines are extraordinary. And when my belief is when you fall in love with Pinot Noir, you become a diehard lover.
You become Miles from Sideways.
Oh my God. It's, well, yeah. I mean, actually, I think it was Virginia Madsen, who was the romantic when she spoke of what Pinot Noir, how romantic and how personal Pinot Noir becomes. And when you get bitten by Pinot Noir, like, there's no turning back.
Right.
And I drink a lot of wines. I love old Cabernet, and I love Spanish varietals. I mean, I really like to drink a lot of different wines. But to make Pinot Noir is a challenge, but it's so feel good.
Rewarding.
Like,
yeah.
oh my God. And the site that I found to work with is not just a simple weenie Pinot Noir. It delivers this lushness and this intensity and this color, you know, like people look at some Pinot and they go, oh, it's like, you know, it's like got nothing. And my wines are like, have a lot more than that. And so, you know, over time, I encourage people to look to the taste, but my wines have a lot of depth and layers and intensity that I think satisfies the Burgundian Pinot Noir lover and the Cabernet drinker. I mean, I really think it delivers a lot of flavor, a lot of feel good to the palate.
Yeah. So I have to know, and we can stick a pin in this and circle back at the end, if you actually met or exceeded your 10 and 20-year projections for the business plan. But I think everybody also wants to know, how did the name Fiddlehead Cellars come about? And was it, which came first, the Fiddlehead or the Fiddlesticks?
Uh-huh. So it's a question because I live, eat, and breathe the history of creating all of this. The projections were pretty darn close, period.
Nice.
The name Fiddlehead, the brand name, came first, and I really sought out a name that described what I was looking for in a new winery. You know, I wanted it to describe who I am, what my wines were, what you feel when you drink my wines. And I literally spent 2 years trying to figure it out. But there were a lot of bad names that we thought about. And remember, my background was in science. It was microbiology, biochemistry. I took botany, and literally.
So osmosis cellars didn't make.
Yeah, right. I was gardening in my fern bed at my home, and I went, oh, fiddle! What a great word. It sounds good. It's melodic. It's memorable. And not only that, but you harvest fiddleheads at the tip of the fern, the new growth of the fern leaf, as a delicacy in cooking in an international sense. And it evolves, it unfurls once a year, like new releases coming out. And it becomes this tremendously elegant plant, like I hope my wines become. And I'm thinking, what better description is there than Fiddlehead? And I learned I had to keep it secret because people had a lot of opinions, but it is truly memorable. My logo represents kind of a stylized F and the design of a fiddlehead. And Fiddlesticks was more a play for fun on, oh shucks, 2 sticks in the ground,
Yep.
to a partner to the word fiddlehead. You know, there's the fiddle chicks, of course.
Mhm.
One. And
Well,
my staff.
you're the head fiddle.
And I'm the head
You are the
fiddle.
head fiddle. Yes, you are.
And but beyond that, my whole brand has developed around some really fun names. Something, a sister wine to the 728 that we're drinking is Lollapalooza. Some of you may not know, but I own the trademark to Lollapalooza in wine. It's not related to Perry Farrell's rock concerts,
Yes.
other than it means the best of its kind.
Mhm.
And his rock concerts are pretty rockin' fabulous, and so is
That was
my
Lollapalooza
Lollapalooza
91 was my first concert ever.
So
So
there you go.
yeah.
Did you know what it meant though? Probably not.
I thought it was more of like a panoply type of thing. I didn't realize it meant the best of its kind. I thought it was more
It's
of
an
a
expression that
a
means
potpourri type
ah,
of, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
interesting.
It actually, you can look it up in the dictionary. It's an American derived word, and but what a great adjunct to Fiddlehead, you know,
Absolutely.
Lollapalooza. One of my reserve barrel selection wines that's available. You know, in the family of what 728 is, but you know, kind of selective and extraordinary, and you pay twice as much, and
Yes.
you gotta taste the difference to invest, but it's absolutely stunning.
Nice. Yes, Scott, I was at 91 and 92, but did not make it to 97. So we'll have to compare notes. The 728 name, I know that is based on the mile marker that your Fiddlesticks vineyard, or your former Fiddlesticks vineyard, was located at. So why did you decide on that name for these particular wines, kind of as your showcase wines for Fiddlesticks?
Yeah, so place, remember, I'm trying to represent the place the grapes are grown. Real believer in not overshadowing what delivers from a site.
Mhm.
And because of our east-west oriented valley, every mile marker along Santa Rosa Road and its counterpart to the north, 246, represents a different character in the wine. There's a overlapping similarity, but they're different. And I wanted people to remember my spot that these wines are made from. And so starting at Highway 1, exactly 7.28 miles, puts you at my driveway. And every year we embrace a celebration for you to drink not only this wine, 728, but all the wines made from that mile marker on July 28th. Drink
Oh, you don't do that in August?
728. Huh?
You don't do that in August or September?
Drink 728 on 728.
I have my t-shirt, I have my glasses, but you know, for those of you who've been up to San Ynez and you've driven Santa Rita, where you would know it is if you've driven, Fiddlesticks is across the street from the original Sanford Benedict Vineyard. So if you've been tasting there, which is a, you know, more famous name that most people know when they've come up there.
More famous than Fiddlesticks?
No, I'm talking about people who've been tasting, you know, at the winery.
Come on, Allison, be nice to our guests. God.
Fiddlesticks is not open to the public, the vineyard.
Right.
You have to be a special invitee for one of the special events she does.
I wonder
So-
who has been a special invitee to one of the events that she does.
Well, the November event was a public event. I mean,
Yes.
It's okay.
no,
So-
but it's a beautiful vineyard. On
Yeah.
if you're driving down the road, you've got Sanford and Benedict on your right. You have Fiddlesticks on your left, and it's.
No, it's
as a-
generally, I mean, it's spoken of in the same words as Sanford and Benedict, Biennacido. I mean, Fiddlesticks, it is considered to be one of the top, best of the best Pinot producing vineyards in all of Southern and Central California. So it's named, I mean, I remember getting wines from Roger Nickel at RN Cellars from Fiddlesticks. And that's how I first became aware of your vineyard.
And I just, that, the vineyard was my vision of a purchase of dirt. And I crafted the clones and the spatial orientation and the cultivation. And I was very hands-on. And it's really about Fiddlehead. It's about the winery and the vision of wines that come from special places, and wines that are memorable, and wines that are delicious. And I just think Fiddlehead is kind of the concept, and everything associated with Fiddlehead comes into play. It's really important.
Nice. Well, let's talk about, since we have, same vineyard, same grapes, two different vintages. Were there any production differences in these, or did you more or less follow exactly the same kind of recipe book, if you will, for both of these wines?
So at Fiddlehead, there is no recipe.
Mhm.
Fiddlehead wines are driven by tasting every day in the field and in the cellar. And if I'm pushed to offer a process, I might say, sure, we punch down, 1 to 2 times a day. It depends if it's the beginning or the end. But frankly, as a small, really, really hands-on winery, it's what did I taste that morning and what did I decide to do that afternoon?
Mhm.
And so in general, the glory and beauty of Santa Barbara County is the evenness of the climate and the predictability of the ripening season and the lack of rainfall during harvest, unlike Oregon, which is unpredictable and you make different decisions. So there is a certain consistency to your expectations of the wines. And yet they were driven on a daily basis by me as the winemaker saying, oh, let's do this or let's do that. And so there's the generic answer and there's the specific daily answer, which is made daily. And I'm not sure I even kept records of what it was. It was determined by the moment. And
Right.
that's like exciting winemaking to me. It's really driven by what does this wine need to be the best, greatest wine possible. And so the vintage variation is kind of nullified by the quest to make them the best wines in each vintage.
Mhm.
I think right now, in part, the 2013, we wanted to present some spread in vintages. It's silky, it's soft, it has finish to it. And the 2015 will be a perkier, just a perkier vintage by
Yes.
virtue of the vintage variation. But I'm not sure I want to say, oh, I like this one better, or I'd rather be drinking this, because for me, as I think my very first statement was, it's about the mood.
Mhm.
And what mood are you in? And you should be picking your wines for what you're in the mood for,
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Like, because they're all,
Glenn Miller would be proud.
at some point you pick the wines because you thought they were good, and you're picking wines for what you're in the mood for.
Yeah.
And so that's why these are both favorites on our patio, where I invite you to join us. But I'm not sure, even in Oregon, where vintage variation comes into play, it definitely comes into play. I'm not sure one makes a better wine over the other. I don't believe in I believe in adjusting your winemaking to make great vintages every vintage.
Yeah. And I will say that, I mean, both of these are phenomenal on their own merits, and I don't think there's a better one from it, but the differences in them are noticeable. I mean, I get much
Yes,
more
they are.
cola on the attack of the 13, kind of that richer, earthier note to it before it kind of ascends into a brighter, almost like an orange kind of citrus note to it. Whereas I get a little bit more, like you were saying, that brighter perkiness, kind of the brighter cherry, sour cherry citrus fruit on the 15, which again, two different moods. If I'm having, probably more like roasted duck breast, duck à l'orange would be the 13. But if I'm having like a filet mignon or something that needs a little more acidity and tanginess, that to me, or even mushrooms, like that would lead into the 15, because I want something a little brighter to it.
And do you think the 15 takes old?
No, that's what's amazing. I mean, both of these wines, you would not guess that they have, 8 to 9 and 6 to 7 years of age on them. They're both bright and fresh and lively, and still have this youthfulness to them that is amazing.
And sometimes on our tasting patio, we might do verticals just to kind of share that little insight.
Yeah.
It's pretty special and important to me to kind of show off that success of ageability. So anyway, I love your descriptions, Chris. I really do very much.
I'm no Allison Levine, but I try. My fingers are still intact. So.
Any comments from the audience on these wines?
Stacy says it's amazing.
I will say that I have texts from Stacy and the crew over there, separate. They want you to adopt them, Kathy.
Wait, where's Stacy and the crew? I'm looking.
Stacey,
Oh, hi,
Scott,
Stacy.
and Rigo there.
Oh, thank you. We can do that.
One of the first Pinots I think that I really ever tasted or drank was this Fiddlehead. I've been a fan. I've been in the wine industry now for over 20 years, and I have been drinking Fiddlehead for as long. So I've always had a very natural affinity to the Santa Rita Hills, and Fiddlehead has always been at the top of my list. So anyone who knows me knows that I always talk about Kathy. So
Yeah, so far we've got
Ooh,
pairing with the
Scott.
Pinots. Yeah, cherrywood smoked pork loin with
Nice.
the with
I
the
like
Pinots.
that.
Yeah, Kathy, any other food pairings? I mean, there are the classics with Pinot Noir. You hear mushrooms quite a bit. You hear
By the way,
duck.
Chris,
Yeah,
Matt has been quiet. He's got to match Scott now with his meal.
yes, that's true. Matt has been very quiet, and it's nice to have Sam Deppendahl here as well. So welcome, Sam is with us. But yeah, Kathy, take us through again. You think about outside of the box food pairings with a Pinot Noir. What are some of your kind of not normal, not traditional pairings with your Pinots?
So I just want to mention that Pinot Noir, just like Sauvignon Blanc, that people go to a restaurant, they want to order a Sauvignon Blanc, and if you're thinking you're going to get a certain type, that would be disappointing. You need to explore what it's going to be like. What style is it? Is it richer? Is it fruitier? Is it younger? Where does it come from? What appellation does it come from? Pinot Noir is the same, that there is not one type, and where it comes from is going to drive flavor profile, aromatic profile, density, extraction. Winemaker will define style. And I really encourage people, if you're exploring Pinot Noir, to force the sommelier to help you appreciate the range of producers that they have, because they're not all the same. And that is most transparent in Pinot Noir because of its transparency as a wine. And frankly, I'm going to say more Cabernets are more alike than Pinot Noirs because of the density of the wine. And so you want to kind of find something that rings your bell. And that's how I want to pick my Pinot Noir. So depending on the vintage, might depend on what I like to serve it with. I hope this doesn't disturb anyone, but I love to support the kids of FFA.
Oh no, we're disturbed if you're talking about kids. Yeah.
Future Farmers of America, and
we do have some vegans on the call, so be careful.
Okay, but that's okay. Pinot Noir is great with lentils, like super great. Are you kidding? Some beef, some dense vegetable stock.
Like a ratatouille kind of would be.
Ratatouille. Oh my God. Yes. I love eggplant and its richness. Like, I don't understand people who don't like eggplant, because I think it's just so delicious.
I physically can't eat it.
In addition, so I help support these kids, and so not to offend anyone, sorry, but meat is grown for market, and I'm part of the market, and I get lamb butchered in many styles, and the range of what you can do with lamb or goat, even, which is a very neutral flavor, incredibly neutral. It's all driven by what you do with it, the spices that you do with it. There's a great herb shop in Oakland. Oh God, I wish I could called. If you give me 1 minute, hold your thought.
Eric, you're right. Goat, outside of Mexican restaurants, goat is definitely underserved. Yes. Sorry, Teresa. I love you.
Okay.
Earmuffs, Teresa, earmuffs.
I'm back.
Okay.
It's called Oaktown Spice Shop. I have no investment in them, but they have some really amazing blends that just help accent wine. And it's just like another exciting discovery. You can buy them online. I like to go to the shop to like smell the spices and kind of find what I really like and then reorder. But anyway, it's pretty cool. You want to know what it goes with. If you like to cook, like there's not one dish out there. There's so many.
No, but just like if there's one that sort of springs to mind that you've made or that you really think is you've worked with a chef to make this dish, that kind of thing. You're the expert on the wine, so we
I'd
follow
like
your
to
lead.
talk about my honeysuckle Sauvignon Blanc, the relative to Happy Canyon.
Yeah.
I had a chef that did a great egg dish, sorry, I'm
And we're the ones who have
runny
been
egg
drinking.
dish with a frisee salad
Oh, nice.
that I thought I had gone to heaven and died and gone to heaven. With Pinot Noir. Oh my God, there's just, duck and, it doesn't have to be your boring duck with cherry sauce. And, there's just such a range of what you can do with it.
Yeah.
So any pate, like I said, lentils, the earthiness of lentils is so good for Pinot Noir. It's really great. Mushroom medley of any sort is great. It doesn't have to be truffle, truffles
No,
are
but you
great.
could do chanterelles or morels.
Oh my God,
or,
in season chanterelles, superb.
Yeah. Hen of the woods.
I'm such a big pasta fan. My mom told me I was going to turn into a noodle when I grew up.
Well, you've got one wrapped around your
I'm
neck.
not kidding.
Yeah, we've had some suggestions of salad lyonnaise and then
Beef
Carrie,
carpaccio with the
yeah,
tomato cream.
thank you for saying it for me, Allison, since I cannot say that out loud.
So that's the thing that just think about what you said, beef carpaccio. It's a raw, it's the range of meat in its bright state to the range of its earthier rendition. And I talked about Sauvignon Blanc being versatile, but look at what the Pinot can do. It's so fantastic. And frankly, Cabernet is much harder to pair, except for like a big steak.
Right. Yeah.
A Pinot Noir doesn't overshadow a dish, but also the dish doesn't overshadow Pinot Noir, at least because my wines have this density and spicy component to it. So in the 15 especially, you get some of this kind of cherry cola that is very respectful of the Santa Rita Hills.
Yeah. So as we wind down here, Kathy, I have to ask, and you don't have to answer this, but what was behind the decision to sell the Fiddlesticks Vineyard? Because in the last year, you sold this to the Miller family. No, sorry. Don't. What?
It's not owned by the Miller family.
Oh,
wrong people.
Sorry. It's I used to know them. I mean, I know it's it's like Wes Hagen is part of them. It used to be am I wrong?
People.
Okay. Allison, please
you
educate
are correct that the Millers and Wes Hagen are connected. You
okay.
are incorrect that they are connected to Fiddlesticks.
Okay, well then that is the question. If anybody wants to correct my
I'm happy to
please do.
Direct.
Thank you for being here, ladies and gentlemen. Allison will finish out the virtual tasting.
Just to fill everyone else in, after 25 years of buying dirt, planting fiddlesticks, growing it up, I don't know if everyone's familiar, but I kept about 15% of the 100-acre vineyard for my own brand, and I grew grapes for probably 20 other winemakers I grew the fruit that I grew for them with the same specialness and intensity that I grew it for myself. And I had a joy in being in the field every day. But there was an opportunity for me to refocus to Fiddlehead Cellars and not being growing grapes for 20 other people. It's creating opportunity for the future for myself. And I wanted to sell to someone who was local, which I did. And it was a group of people, a consortium that farmed, had a history of farming the vineyard and making wine from the region. And they're with some independent investors. Certain key points that were important to me, someone local to carry on the Fiddlesticks name and preserve the specialness of the place was important, which happened. And also to free myself up to explore new horizons, really, really important. And so that's kind of what I did. So this last year, remember, I have wines to release because of my commitment to aging of wines that you will get to share with wines that I farmed, that I was hands-on. But starting in 2022, there's a new owner and oversight person of the vineyard. And who knows what their mission is. I really can't speak for them.
Got it.
My mission is to continue to make great special wines that are intriguing and exciting, and to share with you the wines that I've made that are yet to be released from under my tutelage of the vineyard.
And I had mentioned, and we were talking about where the vineyard is, which wasn't open to the public anyway, but you can always find Kathy at her tasting room in the Lompoc Wine Ghetto,
Okay.
which is where she makes her wine and her tasting room, and where she throws her parties and has live music on weekends. And you know,
We're getting there, Allison. I had one
No, I
question.
know, but I'm
I had
just
one
saying,
question in between.
you can
which
still
is-
find
yes.
her in her normal space, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because nobody could really see the vineyard.
No, Kathy is not going anywhere in terms of winemaking. It's just, yeah, it was, these things occur. It's natural evolution. But no, that's a natural seg, Kathy, to my next question, which is, what is the future of Fiddlehead Cellars? Where is it going? Where would you like to see it go? I'm not going to fall into the trap that Allison did of asking you which varietals or regions you want to work with, because we've
Clearly, you
heard
will
that
not
answer.
get an answer.
Right, exactly. she's better than senators at avoiding questions and giving answers that way. I feel like Chuck
I
Todd.
kind of think Allison has the right answer.
Oh, Allison rarely has the
I
right
love
answer.
to talk about the wines that I've made that you really want to be part of and taste.
Yeah.
And what's to come is a bit of a mystery to us all, but it's not different from my mission and ambition that has driven my brand for 30 plus years. The answer is I'm snooping around, exploring some cool things on the horizon, but whatever I make today, you're not going to taste for a while. What I made 2 years ago, you're going to find some real enjoyment too when I release it after the 15, you have 16, and 17, and 18. And I just appreciate the opportunity to let people know that there's more great wines that are already made, yet to be released, that you should be part of.
Kathy, while after 2022, there will no longer be Fiddlesticks Fiddlehead. Vintage 2022. We'll have 2018 and 19 to enjoy. Will you continue doing your Oregon Pinot Noirs?
Maybe.
Huh? Everything's up in the air.
She's going into distilling, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
She's going to
I
start
mean,
making vodkas
you know,
and gins and bourbons.
It's just the conversation is, like I said, it's like kind of a open field out there. It's so cool. But do I have to commit? I don't feel a necessity to commit.
Says the woman who created the 10 and 20-year projected
just-
business plan.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's a conversation, but do I have to commit? I
No.
don't know.
No.
there's a
We
lot of
just
great
like,
things.
even just sort of generally, is it
Yeah, even
expanding
generally,
expanding the range of grapes? Is it focusing on certain varietals and sort of becoming very narrow? I mean, or is it just
Anything
literally
goes.
wherever the day takes you, whatever you
Yeah.
wake up and feel like you're going to do?
Chris, you had no better
No.
luck than I had.
So Kathy, can I introduce you to a little grape called Poulsard? Because Christian Pillsbury last month rejected it out of hand, but I think it's going to be a winner here in the United States. We do have one quick question from our audience before we let you tell us all we need to know about visiting you and joining your club and whatnot. But David Funder says the 2013 tastes so different from the 2015 in terms of the Pinots. Will you explain why? That's a very metaphysical question, I feel like.
Let's see. I'm not sure I know why. They're 2 years in age difference, but that's not to say like the 2011, in my opinion, is as robust as the 2015. 2013, I can't point to something of the vintage that makes it like people want to point to rainfall or drought,
Right.
and usually those characteristics are like 14, was it 14? We had a lot of rainfall, and yet it was a very expressive vintage. And so that, usually the things that people point to, I'm not sure are accurate in terms of the expression of the fruit. My read on, I agree they're different. I find that 2013 is soft and supple and 2015 is sort of struts and stuff. But all I can point to is that my kind of effort to try to make the best wine of each vintage. And sometimes I like drinking one and sometimes I'm in the mood for the other. And that's kind of what I hope, if you learn about my vintages, then you don't have to always like one wine, but Fiddlehead Pinot Noir, you can pick the vintage that you're in the mood for. That's kind of how I live through my cellar.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I'm not sure I can really tell you why there's a difference.
Awesome. So as Allison mentioned before, you are in the wine ghetto in Lompoc. You make your wine there. You have a beautiful little corner tasting room with a gorgeous patio that I saw you sweep by hand, which was highly impressive. Very few winemakers are doing that when they have a whole staff to do so. So if folks want to come and visit you, if they want to find out more, if they want to buy wine from you online, what's the best
Or
way to
join
do
your
so?
wine club.
Join
or
the club,
whatever.
exactly.
So obviously we have a website, fiddleheadcellars.com. We have a shop that lists all of our wines and many library wines that we make available. During special times of the year, we offer additional offerings. So if you get on our mailing list, then you will be notified through email of those special offerings. We're pretty accessible. So call us if you have special requests or if you want to come visit. You can book reservations on the patio. We do have great music occasionally. So it's something we do in the summer and springtime a lot. And because we were closed over the holidays, we are reinvigorating. If you're around for this weekend, Valentine's Day weekend, Jacob Cole, who's amazing, is great. We have a food truck there. It's always fun and lively on the patio. We have a special menu, including some of the wines that you didn't taste today. And at the very least, sign up for our newsletter, because I try to provide a breadth of information about vineyard topics and winemaking topics, and things that I care about that maybe you care about too. Like I said, I'm very accessible. So even though you send an email to info@fiddleheadcellars.com, I see it.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when you call, especially late at night, it's me answering the phone.
Ooh, that's good to know. I'm going to start calling
Yeah,
at 11:30 just to see if you're
and-
there.
Yeah, and I really care about each of your palates and what's important to you. So I welcome you sharing that information. It's part of the family and why I got into wine in the first place. Again, thank you, Chris and Allison, for giving me the audience, for sharing the wines, and for
thanks,
expanding
David.
the family of Fiddlehead.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you, David. We appreciate that. And yeah, again, if you're interested in picking up more of Kathy's wines, you can check out fiddleheadcellars.com or email me, and I can make arrangements with Kathy to purchase the wines with your cards I have on file, drive them down to you during our next shipment in March. Speaking of March, our next virtual tasting is going to be exactly 30 days from today on March 10th, 2020. We're going to be featuring Maya wines from right here in, I guess technically they're in Paso Robles. Their tasting room is in Atascadero, which is kind of cool, but their vineyards are out on the west side, the Adelaida region of Paso Robles. So keep an eye out for the email. Will be coming out next week with that offer. But thank you again, Kathy. And again, Maya, MEA Wines is the name of it, Eric. You'll get the email, so we'll make sure that you're on there. So thank you again, Kathy, for being here. You were absolutely fantastic. One of the best guests we've had.
Thank you,
Educational,
everybody.
formidable, and informed. All of those. Yes, exactly. So I'm gonna stop the recording now, and
And you can
Alice,
all talk to Kathy directly, or
Yeah,
comment
or
on your food, or whatever you
Kathy's
want.
got to get to her husband and her art. We understand, but yeah.
Thank you.